You're right.
Okay, all right, everyone, welcome. Um, just sending a quick message here. Um, but welcome, everyone. So it's good to see everyone here. I'm bringing you greetings from the basement of my father's house. So if you've been joining me in different things, well, I would say since the beginning of our Lonesome Valley course, I've been in different places for every broadcast this week because I've been on traveling and visiting friends and family that I haven't seen since the pandemic really began. So I'm on the last leg of my trip. So I'm at my dad's house in the basement where I actually used to live. I used to live in this basement. It's a nice basement. um, but this is Northern Virginia. This is the ancestral land of the Oneida and the Mohawk and the Seneca and so forth, and a couple of other tribes in this area. Also significant um, history, Civil War history, as we're on the area that we're on is part one of the outer edges, I think an outer like northern edge of the Manassas, Virginia, which is a big battleground. Bull Run was a big battle in this area during the Civil War. So that's that. A lot of that energy is here as well. And this is all really important because um, we are absorbing the energy of the land. The land, not just the land, but also there are ways in which old energies and memories of particularly really traumatic events are held in spaces. Um, and many of us move to places and live on, certain kinds of land with certain histories, and we're absorbing the energetic history of that land, of that place. And so when I tell people, like when people are moving places, like you may be moving to an apartment, a house, anywhere, I tell people, you know, that you really have to do, I would say, a due diligence around really connecting to the energy of the space that you're moving into, connecting to the unseen beings, you know, the dead folks, other kinds of beings associated with the space that you're moving into, and just like introduce yourself, right? And not just hop on or not just move somewhere and just like colonize it like we do, but you begin to slowly begin to make a connection. And part of that connection means that you're acknowledging the history and the harm, the hurt of the space that you're moving on to, be it the land, be it the house, or whatever it may be. When I was moving back to Atlanta, and I was the house that I was moving into and leasing was owned by friends, and also another group of friends. A family was living in the house, and they were moving out, and that's what made the house available for me to move in. But when my friends moved out, um, the owners of the house um, just spent a couple of weeks just like doing some work in the house before I moved in. And so when that was happening, I happened to be living actually across the street, from where I'd be eventually moving into. So at night, I would go over to the house and just sit with the house and connect with the house and make offerings. Um, because even physical structures like homes are conscious. There's an energy associated with the house, not just the beings in the house, but the house itself. And I would just go and sit and just like introduce myself and, try to connect to it and send energy and meta and all that good stuff into the physical house. Because I felt as if it was also grieving. It was grieving this really wonderful family, my friends who were moving out. It was a couple and their two small kids. And so they were moving out and they were taking a lot of joy, and a lot of love out of the house. And I felt the house really grieving that loss, that transition. Things grieve, not just conscious beings or living beings, but things grieve, plants grieve, right? Inanimate objects can grieve. Homes grieve, Um, and so I would just go and hold space, right? And I would ask, permission to live there, to be a part of the home, also connected to the beings, the unseen beings in the home, and just introduce myself and just made it very clear that we're moving into a co-living situation, right? Like my intention was not to kick anyone out, but I did set a really firm boundary saying that if you're here to do harm, you have to go. Like you have to leave. But if you're just here, trying to, live through the existence that you're currently in, fine. Um, but again, I just believe that we all should do that. I remember also, I really got a sense of this years ago when I lived in the monastery and we were building, a new monastery building on the property. And my teacher would go out like every morning before, the construction folks showed up, and he would just walk around the land, particularly the part of the land that was being built on, and just like say prayers and make offerings. And he would say that he's like settling and calming and reassuring the beings who were associated with the land who were being disrupted because of the building. So that kind of worldview is deeply indigenous. It's deeply pre-capitalism, pre-colonialism. I would say pre-patriarchy. But that's the worldview that we're having to return to. Just to know that like we're not the only beings that exist in this time and space. There are countless beings, who are here. And if we really want to start disrupting our tendency to colonize, and to disrupt and to dominate, we have to start thinking within a more indigenous worldview. That the world, everything is conscious, that I'm living in community with countless beings and countless consciousnesses, if that's a word, countless consciousnesses. Right? And how do I acknowledge that and honor that complexity? What I call this unseen ecologies. Unseen ecologies. This is what I'm writing about. One of the many things I'm writing about in the new books I'm working on. Unseen ecologies. Unseen ecologies. So we're part of this ecological system. Of course, the name may change as I continue to write, but we're part of a system, and we need to remember our part, our place in the system, instead of just kind of walking around and just doing whatever we want. So places are grieving, lands can grieve, homes can grieve. Our car, our vehicles, right, are also conscious. I believe my vehicle is conscious. I can feel a consciousness there, right? And I actually intentionally I was able to buy a newer car last year, and I felt that my old car was really alive, really conscious. And when I got this newer car last year, I had the ceremony. I did the ceremony where I invited the consciousness of, or the spirit of my old car to transfer itself into the new car. And I feel like it, was a continuation, and that's that kind of, I would say, that empathy with the phenomenal world is something that we're working towards, to have this deep feeling and experience of the world and how the world is doing, not just how we're doing, but everything around us and everyone around us, all beings around us are doing. That's so much a part of the goal of our practice, right? And it helps us to experience less isolation, as well. I do not feel alone anymore at all. It's impossible for me to feel alone. I just feel always surrounded. Like, and most of you have been, working through the seven homecomings practice with me for a while now. So you get that. Like, yeah, I can call in my guides, my people, to help, but like, and in a way, they're always there. So I don't have to call them. So that's why I feel now everything is conscious, and aware. And I think that's where we have to return back into this trust that we're in this ecology, that we're being held by this ecology, but also in some ways we're being harmed as well, because there are beings who don't want us to be well, who don't want us to be safe or happy. Right, and that's also another, that's a consequence of ecology, of being in an ecology. So even when we do land acknowledgements, which, land acknowledgements, depending on the indigenous community, that you're a part of or you're working with, there's so many different views around, this land acknowledgement. And I fear that just our land acknowledgements become really performative, with no action, no liberatory or restorative action associated with it. It's like, oh, I'm on this land, and that's where it ends. But what else, right? If I acknowledge, that I am on Mohawk and Seneca and Oneida land, what else do I do? And that's the question that we have to work out. And this is what we've been doing. If you've been practicing with me for the past, definitely for the, since last year, that like, it's more than just acknowledging the land. It's taking care of the land. It's sending energy, appreciation, love down into the land. It's allowing the land to be awakened and conscious. It's allowing the land to tell us what it needs. And then there are other, from that's just like the basic thing that I do, but we have to move deeper into how we're acknowledging the land. It's so easy to be performative, performativity looks good. It's like saying the right thing and doing the right thing and having the right words and language, and that's all really wonderful. But what else? What else are we being called into? That's the question I'm really interested in. But in any case, this is Matara, Sunday service program. And, in this space, we practice the mother, and then we go into some meditation, some longer meditation. So when I talk about the mother, I'm talking about this expression of this cosmic consciousness, this feminine cosmic consciousness. But when we start talking about cosmic and universal and empty, or universal and ultimate, we have to disrupt what we think gender is. So when I say the feminine consciousness, the cosmic feminine energy of the universe, it's not the same thing as saying the female energy of the universe, and what we associate with the construction of femininity, the social construction of femininity. When we get into the ultimate, language is very, very, very tricky. And I think for a lot of us, I think that's where we get really stuck, because we bring our attachment to language into practicing with emptiness and the ultimate. And it's hard to link language with emptiness because language doesn't exist in emptiness or in the ultimate. But instead, when I think about this feminine consciousness, I think about love, right? Which is not gendered, right? I think about nurturing, which is not gendered. What we're thinking about is balance, right? The presence of the feminine doesn't mean the absence of the masculine. Actually, it is both. It's, again, language is tricky here, but it's not the absence of anything. It's not, nor is it the overabundance of another. It just is. It's just love. It is the expression of this deep love. And when I think about love in this context, it's a deep acceptance, right? Which is, I don't like to use this word a lot, but I want to use it now, and I want to say that it's revolutionary. That, granted, we're not overthrowing governments, right? But like, to experience deep, profound, utter acceptance where everything is allowed to be there. You don't get that. You don't get how much we're not doing that. There are parts of ourselves in the world that we're just not attempting to hold space for, because of the pain, the trauma, the shame, etc. But when you experience authentic, profound love, everything is allowed to be there. Love isn't pushing anything away. Even hatred. It's not pushing hatred away, or anger, or violence. It's not doing any of that. It's not what love does. Love is about just this deep allowance, And when you experience this deep allowance, you find that you enter into a space of responsiveness. Not reactivity, but responsiveness. We can't get the space to be responsive if we're always running away from everything. Running away is reactivity. What the love of the mother, in this case, is just this revolutionary experience of acceptance. Everything is allowed to be there. Once everything is allowed to be there, then I can make a choice, right, as to how I respond to things. So, well, so when I talk about the mother, as I said earlier, I think about Tara being the female Buddha, of compassion. Compassion is also about acceptance, but compassion is about, it's empathy, right? Empathy is about touching into what we're experiencing, touching into what is happening around us, and then wanting everything to be free from the suffering, not just wanting, but needing everything to get free. I need, in my practice of compassion, I am needing everything to be free, because when we're not free, we are not expressing our true natures. You know, I want us to move from a state of incarceration to a state of freedom. You know? So there are those of us in this space that are in the course that I'm teaching on my platform, you know, not the Boom Sparta platform, outside of my platform, you know, and so we're exploring, of course, grief, the path of grief and mourning, um, and and I am, as we talked about actually Friday in our last session, am really beginning to understand abolitionism and and contemplative practice. Finally, you know, after years of bothering Yasmin Sadula, who's, you know, my co-author for Radical Dharma, after years of like harassing her, you know, and being really confused because she's an abolitionist scholar. And finally, it's finally like the connections are finally happening pretty rapidly now. But, you know, for me, it's like, oh, like I'm trying to move from a state of being, from the carceral state, the state of being bound, the state of not having agency, to a state of freedom, which is partially about deep acceptance. You know, once I get to that deep acceptance, I can start responding. I can start doing different things. I can start making different choices about how I choose to be in the world. And to do that, we have to enter into the praxis of fugitivity, you know, to become fugitive. And to become fugitive means that we begin to break the rules that have been established to ensure our incarceration, right? Incarceration, when I say incarceration, I'm talking about political, social, relative incarceration, and I'm also talking about the incarceration of ignorance, of delusion, or samsaric. You know, we talk about samsara, the will of delusion. That's samsara is the carceral state, and it continues to be the carceral state until we begin to make different choices as to how we're relating to that state. And basically, that basic choices is that I stop believing in it. Right? I stop believing in the carceral state. I stop believing that that I don't have the capacity to get free. You have to stop believing that. You have to, but another way to say it is that I start believing in freedom. You know, I have to start believing in my capacity to get free, because in a Buddhist framework, we're already free. Like, we're already awakened. We're already endowed with Buddha nature, which is to say that we're expressions of emptiness itself. This is all what, you know, what we mean by Buddha nature is that I am an expression of emptiness. I am an expression of emptiness itself. So I'm already free. But I have expressed myself into an illusion of incarceration. You know, this shit is real profound. I'm telling you, you know, I mean, it's like discovering that you speak another language. For me, at least, you know, it's like, oh, like I can start bridging this now. You have to start believing in your capacity to get free. And it's hard. You know, I was just talking to, you know, a friend of mine yesterday about this very thing and about how hard it is. Like, you're in this world and you're told that, okay, you're not free, even though you may feel free. No, you're not free. And it's hard to get with that. I think Buddhism is a hard thing to sell, particularly if you're not really connected to suffering, right? If you're not connected to the suffering, it's a hard liberation. Practice is a really hard thing to sell people on. It's like, well, I'm okay. Like I don't need to get free, right? You know. Then you have theologies that come along and say, well, you just have to live a good life and die, and then you go to heaven. You know, which is all fine and good until people die, and then they're really confused because they're not in heaven. Then they come and find you, and they're just like, what the hell is happening to me? Then you want to be like, can you like go away? Because I'm not open for business right now. But which is one of the things I have to work with is dead people who are just like, this isn't what I was told it would be. And then I say, well, you should have been Buddhist in this life. That doesn't go over well when I say that. So, yeah, and then of course at this point I think about Fannie Lou Hamer, mother Fannie Lou Hamer, who said that you have to, you know, I paraphrase this, right? You have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I always come back to that because I just feel like, it's about hitting rock bottom. You're like, I'm just so sick of this. I'm so sick of, whatever it is, racism and climate instability and capitalism and sickness and fear and violence and trauma. I'm just so tired of this. When you get to that, then you're ready for the message, for the good word, for the gospel, the Dharma gospel. That this is bullshit. Like, this is all bullshit and a pain in the ass because this is not where we belong. This is, we are relating to this experience of the illusion in a way that's not conducive to getting free. We're just believing in it and saying, well, this is life. Yes, this is life, but this is just one expression of life that we're trying to radically shift our relationship to this life. And to say that, oh, this isn't where I belong. This is just an experience that I'm having, like a thought or an emotion or a sensation in the body. Yeah, and this experience may last a long time and it may be really intense, but it's still an experience. Many of us are born with certain conditions and experiences, or we develop these things over the course of our life, and it can be really painful and overwhelming, and it's still an experience. Because nothing is permanent. Nothing is forever, right? No matter how long we've struggled with something, it's not going to last forever. There's no such thing as forever unless we're talking about anything that is unborn, anything that is, forever. And like emptiness is forever. Nature of mind is forever. Like, that's permanent. Which then this is another nuance of the path, is that, like, yes, everything in the relative is impermanent. That means it's shifting, changing. There's no basis for its existence. But when we get into the ultimate, there is permanence. There is a permanence there. The ultimate is the ultimate. It doesn't change. What changes is that maybe we project into the relative, into an illusion, which is part of what we're struggling with, is that we have become distant or estranged from our ultimate natures, from our Buddha natures, from emptiness. And we're trying to get back there, right? So we're trying to divest from systems that perpetuate the illusion, and we're trying to invest in compassion, which is, of course, the wish for us to get free, and wisdom or clarity. And we need both of those. Those are the two things that we need to join together, like Voltron, or like Captain Planet, or like whatever it is, you know, or like, the crystal gems, right? Just like we need to fuse all these things together to create a force, that disrupts our divestment and the relative and samsara, really. So again, coming back to the mode, we're going to practice now because I'm not going to talk the whole time, as I like to do sometimes. But this is the point of our practice. Compassion and wisdom come together to create a force that begins to disrupt our investment in samsara. Because you're getting clear, and you're getting empathetic, so you're like, oh, this isn't what I need, and this isn't what any other being needs, actually. So what do I do now? And that begins the path of awakening back to our true natures. So when we talk about so what we're trying to do in our practice is move through these layers, these folds of delusion, to start touching into the ultimate state, I would say, but I would also say the energetic state, our energy bodies, right? And the mother, and all the ways the mother manifests, right, is an expression of this emptiness that we're trying to connect to. So like there's emptiness, and then there are all these doorways that help us to experience emptiness. So I call that doorway mother. Some of us call it God. In Tantra, we may call it the guru. In other traditions, we call it the creator, or whatever. Like any deity, it's about figuring out the door for us to enter into the ultimate. But to do that, it's not just this easy sashaying into the ultimate. It means that we have to move through these deep, unconscious, subconscious ways that we're fixated, or we're struggling, rather, with suffering, with the suffering. And this is also what's really, really tricky as well, because like you have to go inward in order to come out, right? So for me to do the labor of getting free, I have to first do this labor of going inward into all the places that scare the shit out of me. In fact, I believe that you won't really experience liberation until, as I said earlier, until everything is able to be held. And you're not trying to get rid of trauma. You're not trying to be trauma-free. You're not trying, to do any of that. You're not trying to be free from anything. What we're trying to do is allow there to be space for everything. Right? For the, as we say in this duality, the good and the bad. When you can sit with the shadow, as Jung talked about in his work, the shadow, like everything we just kind of push away that we don't want to deal with. When you can just go and sit in that shadow and just be like, there you go, right? There's the hate, there's the shame, there's the trauma, there's this like, the belief that I'm better than everyone else. There you go. There's my, the things that I dare not name. When you're able to sit and just hold space for it and to love it, which is again to accept, to love and accept it, then that's where you'll see the real freedom happening, right? Because you're no longer busy and distracted trying to get away from those experiences. We spend a lot of time avoiding the shadow, and we get exhausted avoiding the shadow because we refuse to name the shadow. To name it it's heartbreaking to name the shadow. To say that I am not who I pretend to be. I am not the person other people think I am. I have done some really ugly things to myself and to others. And to name that, and to name those things. And it's practice I do almost every day, and I've done some really just like awful stuff. It's like at some points in my life, I feel like I've been like a Disney villain, you know? Um, and I like Disney villains, by the way, because, well, I like what Disney, this is a loaded thing I'm about to say. I like how Disney is giving context to these traditional villains in the Disney universe. Like, people just aren't evil, just because they were born evil, right? The people do things because they've been deeply hurt and they don't know how to deal with the hurt. So we start making certain choices. We want other people to hurt in the ways that we've been hurt. We don't know how to reconcile. We don't know how to heal, right? And as I've said over and over again, it's like we have difficult relationships with people. And sometimes those relationships aren't even about us, Like, I may have a problem with someone. It may not even be about me. It may be about how this person's struggling to be well, from past hurt they have experienced. So we think about the things that we've done in our lives, and we also have to think about, well, like, what was really happening? Did I really just want to hurt someone for the hell of it because it was a good time? Or was I actually trying to work with or to be in a relationship to a deep hurt or a trauma? And I was doing the best that I could, but that best meant that it just hurt someone. I took advantage of someone, whatever it may be. Right? It doesn't excuse the action, right? It doesn't excuse the harm, but it gives context to why that harm happened. That harm isn't just this anomaly, because I'm just an evil person, or you're I'm just an evil person. That's just like, there's no story, there's no context. I'm just evil and I just do evil. The world isn't like that. And the world isn't just like people just do. I'm not saying there aren't evil beings. There are just, there are demons, right? There are demons, real demons, that their whole existence, their existence has emerged, with the intention of just causing harm. So yeah, that's that. But those are demons. So when I'm talking about people, or just other kinds of beings who are born, right? Well, actually, that's not clear because demons can be born. But for the most, let's just back up and say, for the most part, the people that we encounter, even the people in history that we have considered vile, even those people are responding to past trauma, or they're possessed. Anyway, that's another talk for another day. So let's start. Let's just start practicing. So we're gonna go into. So I know some of you are new to the practice, and so again, like Medicine Buddha, it's just a guided practice really around connecting to this energy of love and compassion from from what I call the mother, from the system of mother practice. Um, and just really just moving through just like different little practices, the different exercises that help us to really start embodying this love, this care. Um, and we're just going to move through just really different things. Most of this is familiar for those of you who've practiced, you know. And we're gonna, yeah, I want us to kind of, shift some attention to the grief at some point as well in the practice. So we'll be angling towards that for those of us in the grief course as well. But to say this also before we begin, we talk about motivations of people and grief, the grieving, right? The ways in which we're struggling to be with loss, the way that our ego is struggling to figure out who we are after change and loss. In that struggle, we may do things that are really harmful to ourselves and to others. You know, um, but the foundational practice is learning how to name the experience of grief and to experience that grief, right? And call in the support that we need to support us in during the grief and to call in the self-care work, right? Because we have to care for ourselves, our bodies specifically, to support the work of grief. Um, so, yeah, let's begin. Let's just kind of get into it. Okay. So as we begin, I really invite you just to come into um, a position that feels uh, appropriate for you. Of course, you can lie down or stand up or do whatever feels right for you in this moment. And let's turn our attention into intention. So what are your intentions for practice? Who are you? How are you hoping to benefit yourself? How are you hoping to benefit others? But also, who are you practicing for? Is also a really important intention. For me, I practice for the world. I practice for those connected to me. Um, I practice to reduce experiences of violence in my own experience so I don't translate that violence into relationships. So developing your intentions right now. When you're ready, I invite you to move into beginning to dedicate the merit of your practice. So whatever benefit that you experience, that you instantly dedicate it out to all beings who need this liberatory energy, this freeing energy. And as I often say these days, like anytime during a practice, you can just take a break and dedicate the merit like this. More the merrier. And if you just check out the chat box, we're going to be putting in the Tara's mantra at some point. Tara Tu Tara Ture Soha. And we'll get that in just a moment. We don't need it yet, but in a bit we will. So we're going to practice with Tara's mantra, green Tara. And often green Tara is the mother that I'm drawing from. I'm connected to several expressions of the mother, but green Tara is tends to be a principal expression. Green Tara meaning swift compassion, swift action to free beings, the mother liberator. The Tara, and Tara means star. Not like superstar, but she's a guiding star. And so I invite us, if you have the capacity right now, to turn your attention to the breath, noticing the in breath and the out breath. If you can't be with the breath, that's fine. I suggest you turn your attention to something that's more neutral right now. Just the weight of your body on the seat and so forth. Just something neutral. But if you're able to be with the breath, and just notice the breath moving in and out, allowing the breath to slow down, to elongate. Breathing deeply in, breathing deeply out. And when you're breathing, I want us to breathe from our tailbone. So going all the way down to our seat, to our sitting bones, inhaling and exhaling from that place. So it's as if we're inhaling up the spine from the base. And then as we exhale, we feel that breath go back down. So inhaling up, exhaling down. And that is going to start awaking a lot of the energy, in the central channel primarily, but also in the chakras. Breathing deeply. And if your attention's on something neutral, or if your attention's with the breath, either or, next I want you to just begin to reflect on, what you're concerned about as you're breathing, or focusing on something neutral. Like allow those concerns to start surfacing and naming those concerns. Be it climate, be it political situation, be it money, wellness, health, sickness. Allowing those concerns to really surface, to name them. What are you worried? What are you concerned about? What's creating anxiety? And as those concerns rise, I want you to do different things. So if you're working with the breath, just imagine that you're just like offering these concerns into the breath. And it's like they're being just breathed and moved around. Um, and allow your imagination just to go however you want to go with this. Sometimes in my practice, my breath, I imagine my breath becoming a river, a flowing river. I'm just offering these concerns into the river, letting these concerns float down this river of breath. Sometimes for some of us, it's visualizing that we're just exhaling these concerns out of our bodies, and the energy is just being exhaled. So as I, for instance, worry about like the political situation right now, or COVID-19 or the Delta variant, whatever, I allow that concern to arise. I imagine just breathing it out. So the anxiety arises around those concerns, and I release it. Now, if you're focusing on something neutral and not working with the breath, even just turning your attention to that neutral sensation and just offering these concerns into that anchor, wherever you're focusing on, just offering, letting the anchor kind of absorb this anxiety, this concern, this fear, whatever it may be. But you're offering, no matter what you're doing or where you're at, you're offering, you're arising, letting go, and offering it out of your experience. Just another minute here. So when you're ready, we're going to shift just slightly into a different form of practice. Again, we can either stay with the breath or stay with something that feels neutral. And in this next part of the practice, I invite you to begin to say, to say something as like a mantra. And this phrase I want you to begin to repeating is that is I deserve to be free, right? And so just saying that over and over again in your mind, or you can say it also verbally in your space. I deserve to be free, right? And then as things continue to arise, anxiety and fear and so forth, again, continue to offer that into the breath, offer that into your neutral um, anchor. But I deserve to be free. I deserve to be free. I deserve to be free. It's about another 30 seconds with this phrase. I deserve to be free. Okay. So we're going to shift that phrase a little bit from I deserve to be free to I need to be free. I need to be free. I need to be free. And what comes up around repetition of that phrase, I need to be free. So we're going to shift again, continuing to work with phrases, but we're going to shift the energy of these phrases now. So going back to the first phrase, I deserve to be free. Now I invite you to begin to say instead, all beings deserve to be free. All beings deserve to be free. And again, just noticing what arises in that repetition. All beings deserve to be free. All beings deserve to be free. If you want to add a little bit of an energetic edge to this, you can say all beings deserve to be free, even the beings that I don't like, even the beings that I have formally told to go to hell. Even those beings deserve to be free. But that's the advanced part of the practice. And now let's shift that phrase again. You begin to say, all beings need to be free. All beings need to be free. And again, if you choose to, adding that edge, all beings need to be free, even the ones that I don't like need to be free. So again, even the ones that I don't like need to be free. And if you're in that part of the contemplation, maybe add all beings that I don't like need to be free, because if they were free, maybe they would be less violent. So again, adding a context to that contemplation if you choose to. Just a little bit longer, maybe about 30 more seconds here before we transition. So we're gonna just transition from the phrases. If you're working with the breath, I invite you to return back to the breath. If you're working with a neutral anchor, returning to that neutral anchor. Just letting go. And just letting go of just the phrasing and everything that's come up and turning back to these basic anchors. And when you're ready, I invite you to start gathering, calling into your space, your benefactors. So your homecoming circle, or any other benefactor um, that feels appropriate for you. So any being that loves you and any energy that helps you to experience freedom. Calling all of this into your space, into the circle around you. And this includes teachers, guides, mentors. This includes your wisdom texts, so the artifacts, the teachings, and how the teachings manifest for you in terms of books and ideas and art and so forth. Calling to the space your communities that care for you. Calling to the space any benevolent ancestors and lineages that you're a part of. And then calling the earth again, and silence, and so forth, and so on. And once that circle is with you, just beginning to radiate, imagining radiating, that they are radiating the energy of care into the circle around you. And that care it can be love, it could be just being seen and witnessed, it can be wherever you needed to be in this moment. You can imagine that energy to be whatever seems appropriate for you. Often I imagine that energy is warmth. The energy of care is warmth beginning to gather around me. You can visualize light. Or you can just connect directly to the felt experience of energy, which feels dense and staticky, whatever that manifests for you. But you don't have to visualize or feel anything. You can just say, oh, the space around me is being filled with energy, is being charged with this energy of care. And again, this is the point of the practice where we can just sit and explore our experience of being cared for and held by beings that love us, by energies that want us to be well. And to say, I am not alone, that we're never alone. But even in this moment, I want to specifically say and believe that I'm not alone. And so, slowly, when you're ready, beginning to imagine that this energy begins to deeply saturate our bodies. And as this energy is sinking in, saturating our bodies, I invite you to explore what it means for the energy of the mother to start manifesting in the body and in your mind, just in your experience in general. What does it mean as this energy of care is being deeply absorbed? How do you feel connected to this ultimate divine expression of love and care that we call the mother? What is your experience in this moment? So, shifting your attention up to the heart center now, as we're connecting to this energy, experiencing the mother in the body. In the heart center, I invite you to imagine that a star begins to awaken in the heart center. This white, glowing, radiant star just right in the heart center. And the star represents the mother in the form of Tara, as the star, as the guiding light that leads us towards deeper compassion, that takes us to the end of this path of liberation. The star, like the northern star that guided so many people toward freedom. So allowing that star to awaken, the star again the symbol, the expression of Mother Tara. And as the star awakens, I, just for a few moments, encourage you to reflect on what is leading you to experiences of freedom and liberation. What leads you there? Just a few more moments. When you're ready, I encourage you or invite you to begin to imagine that this radiant, glowing star in your heart center begins to fill your whole body with this energy, this light that illuminates, that lights this path into wisdom and clarity. We begin to imagine that this light begins to radiate from our bodies, and we imagine that the world begins to be illuminated, where we feel their shadow, our doubt, our ambiguity, the light radiating from our bodies and from the star that is Tara begins to just radiate and illuminate paths of clarity. And situations are for people in the world around us. That we actually become Tara, the guiding star for all beings. And as we're sitting with that visualization, we'll go and practice. We'll start practicing with our mantra, Om Tar Tutare Ture Soha. You can chant along or just listen. You begin. O Soha Tara Tu Tara Tu Re Soham Ta Re Tu Ta Re Tu Re Soham Ta Re Tu Ta Re Tu Re Soham Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soham Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soham Tare Tu tare tu re, so how tare tu tare tu re, so how tare tu tare tu re, so 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 tare tu tare tu Ure, ooh, ooh, so and so just letting the mind rest within this brilliance, this energy, this light of yourself as Tara. And this energy, this brightness, this radiance is just basically the natural radiance and brightness of your awakened mind. Just resting in that radiance. Okay, and slowly coming back into the space, coming down to the weight of the body, making contact with the seat. Getting to acknowledge the earth under you as well. And if you are with the breath, returning to the breath, returning to deep inhales and exhales from the base of the spine. And letting the exhale bring us back down to the seat. So as we inhale, rising up the spine, exhaling, coming back to the seat. Just a few more breaths like that. So returning our attention to our circle of care, our homecoming circle around us, thanking our circle for their care and love for us, and imagining that they begin to dissolve into white light, and that white light is absorbed into our own heart center. And whatever light we experience radiating from our bodies, we can imagine that that light also begins to be just absorbed deep into the heart center. Now allowing, just moving through, actually just offering appreciation to the different parts of our practice, including the earth, starting with the earth, thanking the earth for holding us, thanking the seat for supporting us, and the breath and our minds and so forth, whatever feels appropriate for you to thank. You can thank the physical space that you're practicing in as well. So being grateful for everything. When you're ready, coming back into a final dedication of merit. Again, whatever benefit that I've experienced, I dedicate it out to all beings who need this experience. Right, coming back into the space, doing some simple movements to awaken your body, shaking it off. Right. Thank you so much for your practice. And I just want to, I know there are some questions here. If you have questions, I'm going to try to answer all of them in the next 10 minutes. You see an ask a question box, and you can just type in your question there. And this is the way that we keep them organized. Okay. So Let's see, what is this? Oh, is it ever too late from Lorena? Is it ever too late to do this after 3 years of living somewhere? Any advice on getting to know the land and the indigenous stewards of the land? Yeah. I mean, literally, I mean, just being in your home, and everyone has different living situations, but being in the home and just opening and just becoming curious about how your home feels, Um, and it's not that like, you don't have to feel anything or sense anything to confirm it, but it's just the way that we're offering a gesture of opening and connecting is a lot. It can be quite beneficial. Um, like, from my home, it's like I just take care of it. Um, like just caring for the home, the work of homemaking, homemaking, which is a practice, right? The practice of homemaking, and that impacts the home. When we care for our home, that appreciation is infused into the home. Talking about the land, yeah, I do all kinds of things with the land that I live on. Some of them are really advanced, some of them are really simple, but I've taught this practice before. I just sometimes go outside and just just touch the earth, the land, the earth under me. I just thank it. I thank the land for supporting me, for holding me. I send this energy. We do this often in Medicine Buddha. I send the energy of gratitude down into the physical earth, right? And that's a way that I begin to take care of the land. Um, so And then over time, I mean, this is different for everyone, but sometimes we begin to have dreams. We begin to dream about them. I had this experience, and not to get into too much detail, but I had this experience where I was practicing out on a river. I was on a boat on a river last week. Actually, exactly a week ago. It was last Sunday. And I did this practice, kind of opened up to the river and just got all this data. And then later that night, I had dreams about the river and the beings associated with the river. So, like, this is like real stuff that happens, you know. Um, so, so hope that's helpful. And then this other question: what does it mean to say the deceased, find themselves here or there? We're told much of our individuality doesn't survive the death of the body. Oh, it survives. The mental body survives the physical body. That's that's the issue. The mental body will reform, will recreate the illusion of the physical body, and this is how we're able to see, different spirit manifestations on this plane. The mental body is just recreating. Now, there are some beings who have significant agency over their mind, so they can just like be whatever they want to be. That's both good and bad, depending on the compassion and the love of that particular being. Um, so there's always a difference here. It's like, well, this is what I'm told, but what I'm telling you is this is what I experience, and what other mediums and psychics experience. So, like, this is the thing that, that's you all know I talk about this all the time, but the space that I'm in is that this is what I've been told, but what I've been told doesn't match my experience, right? Because what I've been told comes from a different culture that I'm not. a part of, like Tibetan culture, for instance. A lot of like my introduction to unseen world comes from Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan culture. Well, I'm not Tibetan, so therefore I've been conditioned to relate to the world in a very different way and to the unseen world in a very different way. My relationship to the world has been deeply influenced by hoodoo, um, which is like Black American. I wouldn't say Black American Tantra, but I would say Black American magic traditions, which I, I wasn't specifically given those teachings, but it was infused in the way that I grew up. So that's how I began to, how I've been conditioned to see the world, right? But yeah, so but anyway, getting back to the point of the question here is that yeah, there is individuality. As long as ego, as long as we are attached to ego, individuality will always be an issue, regardless of if we're alive or dead. You know, death doesn't do. We don't. If we haven't worked for certain things, it's just not gonna. It's not gonna automatically happen when we die. You know, I think sometimes we're raised with this belief that, oh, you know, I just have to be a good person, then I'll die. And it really isn't. It's not really always like that. Like we have to. The thing that I appreciate about contemplative practice, particularly Buddhism, is that you're given specific work to do in order to transition into the formless realm. And I think that's really important. I won't be able to get to all the questions. So let me just see if I can just, in the next 2 minutes, there are two questions here about housing. So experiencing housing insecurity and overwhelmed by tasks require taking care of the house and property. Okay, let me see. So in terms of housing insecurity, right, this is the point where we have to turn back into aspirations and to say, this is what I need, right? You know, this is what I need. I need housing security. I need a place. And we have to intentionally say that and plug that intention into all our practices. And we have to ask everyone, well, this is the tricky part. We have to ask people around us who are our allies and who love us to also make those aspirations for us to find secure housing. Aspiration is how you begin. We can call it prayer aspiration, but this is how we begin to shift the phenomenal world, is through aspiration, because we begin to invite other beings, other energies to make something happen for our well-being. So we have to just start aspiring, praying. I need security, and this is the basis of my practice. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for aspiration. One of my first teachers, Lama Rod, whom some of you know, from Natural Dharma Fellowship, you know, as like one of my first serious teachers, you know, when I would have the aspiration, I guess, to become a teacher, she was like, you have to start aspiring. You have to start praying for it, right? Anything that's important, you have to pray for, including housing. And then lastly, so I know there's something else coming up at one. The advice on being overwhelmed by tasks required around taking care of the house and property. Yeah, I think that's a serious issue. A lot of people, I've been having this conversation with people too, because I have a house. Now it's the first time I've ever had a house, and it's just like, oh, you know, like things fall apart and I have to replace that. And I don't own the house, but I still am responsible for certain things, you know. And I think that we have to think about what our capacity is to care for our home, for the land, and how we may need to ask for help. You know, if we're really overwhelmed, how can I ask for some support? Again, aspiration, like I need help caring for my home for the land. Who can I ask? Okay. So that's all I can get to right now because I have another meeting now, starting right now, actually. So I want to thank everyone. You know, I know there are people from Bumi Sparsha. I know some of you are coming in from Calm because you've been dazzled by the program on the Calm app, and the rest of you are coming in from the Lonesome Valley course. So welcome, and I invite all of you back tomorrow night for Medicine Buddha practice, which we haven't had for 2 weeks because I've been traveling. But we'll have Medicine Buddha practice tomorrow night, and we'll continue. It'll be very similar, but we'll continue this practice together. So thank you, everyone. Please just please take care of yourself. Protect your energy, wear your masks, do the basics. And I will see you all again soon in some capacity. Okay. All right. You all be well.